Hi, my name is Randy Henderson, author of the Fin Fancy series, which if you've read it, you know I love the 80s, I love humor, I love romance, and few things epitomize all of that for me as much as the John Hughes films of the 80s. The holy trinity of which were 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, and of course, Pretty in Pink. Unfortunately, Pretty in Pink had one of the worst endings in cinematic history. Not that I feel strongly about this. Which is why I am coming to you Ducky style to talk about Pretty in Pink, to talk about the original ending versus the new ending, and a little bit about love triangles and good versus bad endings, and then I'll read you the original ending to Pretty in Pink. So, Pretty in Pink. It is a love triangle, as previously mentioned, between Andy Walsh, a strong, independent female character who has her own sense of style. In fact, she makes her own clothes. She holds down a job at the record shop to support herself and her deadbeat dad. She goes to high school and doesn't give an F what anybody thinks about her, for the most part. She's independent, she's got her plans, and she's going for it. Then you have her best friend for life, Ducky Dale, similar to her in many ways. They share a lot of interests. He has a sense of humor. He also has a strong independent sense of style. They both love music, and they support each other constantly in different ways. And then finally, you have the love interest of the movie, which is Blaine. Although I think he should have been called Bland because this guy is not even vanilla. He is like water flavored. There is nothing to him. Seriously, nothing. I've watched this movie and there's zero going on here. He has no interest or taste in music. He's a high schooler with no interest in music. No real sense of humor. Nothing. The only thing he has going for him, of course, is that he is the cute boy and he is rich. So, cute rich boy asks out the girl from the Freaks and Geeks crowd to go out on a date. And she says yes. And they go out on this date and it's horrible. He completely ignores everything that she wants, ignores all of her concerns. He drags her to this party with his rich friends that she doesn't want to go to, and sure enough, she's treated like crap there. And so after all of this really crappy first date with this person who has zero personality, zero shared interests, they kiss, he asks her out to prom, she's excited. So anyway, they start dating, and it goes predictably horribly. His rich friends start saying, why are you dating her? He ghosts her in the end, just stops taking her calls, he pretends like he doesn't see her at school, until she finally confronts him, calls him the a-hole that he is. Meanwhile, Ducky, her best friend, is crushing on her hard time, but doesn't want to tell her he loves her. And then she starts dating this guy, Blaine, and he is quite upset, and then finally is like, I can't be friends with you anymore while you're dating this guy. And she decides, you know what, screw it, I'm going to the prom anyway, on my own. I'm going to show them they can't crush me. Andy's going to do Andy. She makes her own dress, she goes to the prom. Now here's where the endings split. The original ending, which they filmed and then threw away, she shows up to the prom, and she chickens out, decides not to go in, and then Ducky is there to support her. And they go in together. And it's one of those things where she realizes he is always there for her. He will always be there for her. The perfect person for her was in front of her the entire time. And then they dance, and it's a romantic ending. They tested that with some test audiences. And apparently the test audiences, and from rumors I've heard, also Molly Ringwald, were like, I think the Andy character would go with the cute rich boy. So John Hughes caved into the poll results and rewrote the ending to be what you see in the movie if you watch it today. And in fact, they had to bring the actors back to refilm that final scene. And Andrew McCarthy, the guy who plays Blaine, he had gone off to shoot another movie, had lost a bunch of weight, cut off all his hair, so they had to put this horrible wig on him. So he looks kind of weird in that final scene. Now, one of the reasons that the original ending might not have tested so well is because Molly Ringwald was actually horribly sick during that final scene, the prom scene, the original shoot with Ducky. So basically, she's trying not to throw up. She actually passed out. She fainted while they're dancing on the dance floor in that final scene. So I'm thinking that maybe the test audiences picked up on that a little bit. Maybe, that she was literally feeling ill in that situation and that there wasn't chemistry between them. I don't know. But on the other hand, it is very true that we cannot control who we love, and quite often, especially in high school, looks often triumph many other factors. So they refilmed the ending, and that's what you see. However, they also wanted to release a book with the movie. And obviously, For the book to come out at the same time or even before the movie, the writer, the person who wrote the book, needed to have the script in order to base the book off of. So the book is based off of the original script, and it was done and being printed by the time that they went and reshot that. So they didn't have the opportunity to make the change in the book that they did in the movie. So we have the original ending. Now, just a quick word on the pros and cons of the two endings and alternate endings. When I saw this in the 80s, I was devastated. I totally thought that Ducky and Andy were perfect and they should have gotten together. I have since evolved a bit and grown up, and I can see many alternate perspectives as well. The first being of which, it would have been perfectly cool if Andy had just said no to both of them. Ducky, you're my friend for life. Blaine, you're a lame loser. Andy's going to go do Andy. Have fun. And that would have been cool. I also would have been okay if she had gone with her best friend from gym class, who doesn't really show up much in the rest of the film, but that would have been a cool ending. Also, alternately, I can understand the perspective that the current ending works well in the terms of realism. Just because you love someone doesn't mean that they're going to love you back, or that they need to love you back, or that there's any obligation on their part to love you back in the same way that you love them. And so just because Ducky loves Andy doesn't mean that Andy needs to love him back, and there's nothing wrong with her just wanting to be friends. And a one-sided love isn't real love, and Ducky then should, in theory, realize that, move forward, accept that as a friendship, and seek real romantic love elsewhere. And I'm cool with that. However, the movie, as written, is a romance. It's a love triangle with Ducky and Blaine and Andy, and in that you are set up to expect that she will ultimately choose one or either or both of the persons who love her, and they will have a happy ending, a romantic ending. That's what you would expect, especially from an 80s romantic comedy. So, with that expectation, and having only these two to choose from, I would say she was much better off going with Ducky, who shared her interests, had a sense of humor, who obviously supported her and loved her and cared for her, than with Blaine, who was emotionally abusive and a coward and had nothing going for him except for, well, looks and money. But, you know, that's just my opinion. By the way, love triangles, I'm pretty sure this movie inspired like 95% of modern YA, whether directly or indirectly. Twilight, Hunger Games, Divergent, love triangles galore. Okay, so now I'm going to read you the original ending to Pretty in Pink. First, I'm going to mention a couple things about the book. The author is H.B. Gilmour. She's no longer with us, but together with her writing partner, Randy Reisfeld, they wrote a number of these types of books. They wrote a series based on the movie Clueless. They wrote the Twitches series, which ended up as a Disney series. To give you an idea of the intended audience of the book, in the back here we have an ad for Sweet Valley High books, and we have an ad for Couples, what every girl wants most of all, to be part of a couple. But anyway, you get the idea. So without further ado, finally, I'm going to read to you the ending, the original ending to Pretty in Pink, slightly abridged to cut out the dad and a couple of Blaine's rich friends. All alone, Andy walked down the long hallway leading to the ballroom. The hotel carpeting was thick and soft under her feet. She moved slowly, holding her head up, clutching her gloves and evening bag. At the end of the carpeted corridor, the massive double doors were closed. She heard the music spilling from the room. It was now or never, she knew. She slowed down and stopped. She had to decide whether or not she really wanted to go through with this. She'd been so calm up until now, right up until she'd seen the closed doors and heard the music and the voices and the laughter coming from the ballroom. If she waited at that door, listening from now until forever, she would not hear the voice of a single friend inside that room. Not one person who would welcome her, be happy to see her, or even be willing to talk to her. Not one person would think of her as anything but an intruder. What was she doing here? What was she trying to prove? It was her senior prom, but seniors like Andy Walsh were not expected to attend. Fighting tears, Andy took a step backward. She knew she was on the verge of bolting from the hotel. For a second, her hands curled into defiant fists. Then all at once, she let out her breath. Her shoulders drooped. She'd lost her nerve. "Oh no," she whispered. "No." And angrily, she brushed away a tear. Damn it, no," she murmured. whirling away from the door and turning to leave. She took a step, then stopped and looked down the hall. At the far end of the mezzanine was a boy. He was tall, lean, striking, a boy in a sleek black tuxedo, dark hair swept back, and sunglasses. Andy stared at him. She peered hard down the corridor. The boy peeled off the sunglasses and revealed himself. Andy's mouth fell open. "Ducky?" she breathed. She was stunned. After all that had happened, all the pain she'd caused him, he had come to be with her. He really did love her. Under the strange clothes, the weird behavior, the quirks and eccentricities, was the strongest, truest, and most noble friend she'd ever had. "Oh, God," she murmured, and then she started to cry. Smiling, Ducky moved down the hallway toward her. She met him midway along the corridor and threw her arms around him. "What happened?" she asked. "You're looking at it," Ducky whispered against her hair. He held her at arm's length. "You look breathtaking," he said. She laughed and hugged him again. "I want you to know, though," he said, as he stepped back, "that despite the new coif and the duds, I remain the Duck Man." He pointed to his feet. Andy looked down. Ducky was still wearing his ancient high tops. "May I admire you?" Andy said softly through her tears. "If you wish," he said, and she laughed. Ducky Dale looked at her with his ice-melting grin, his dark eyes dancing with pleasure at the sight of her. He offered his arm, and they started down the hall together to the ballroom. The doors opened as they approached, and they walked in. The crowd surrounding the dance floor, the couples standing and talking and laughing, turned towards them one at a time, and then in twos, threes, and fours, growing silent, stunned, clearing a path as they passed. They stepped up to the edge of the dance floor, and the people who saw them stopped dancing. Blaine was among them. He looked over his shoulder to see what the others were staring at, and then he dropped Kate Hanson's hand, the girl he had come to the prom with. He stopped dancing and turned toward Ducky and Andy. He was mesmerized. Kate looked at Andy, and then she looked at Blaine, and then she crossed her arms peevishly. Blaine was smiling at Andy Walsh. Andy was smiling too, though she hadn't seen Blaine. She looked across the dance floor, not focusing on anybody, just feeling Ducky's hand on hers, just knowing he was with her, and smiling. Andy and Ducky stood proud in the silent ballroom, all eyes on them. And then, finally, someone moved. The crowd parted, and Blaine McDonough walked slowly towards them. Behind him, Kate was hissing, "No, don't! Come back!" And some of the crowd were whispering, "He's out of it, man," one guy said. "What's he doing? Isn't she the one who went berserk on him in the hall?" But Blaine kept on going. Andy saw him, and he kept on looking and walking toward her, and she didn't turn away. And Ducky, watching Blaine approach, knew he had nothing to fear, nothing to risk. In a way, he admired Blaine for coming over. Blaine offered his hand to Ducky. Ducky looked at it, and at Blaine. Finally, he shook Blaine's hand. And then Ducky squeezed Andy's hand, released her, and walked away. He stepped over to the bandstand to the conductor, determined to get the music started again. Blaine smiled at Andy. For the first time since he'd seen her in the halls at school, he knew that he was good enough for her. For the first time, he was able to meet her strength and honesty with his own. He saw her smile. He saw her eyes accept his gesture, his unspoken apology, his admiration and love. And then he turned away. Damn straight. Ducky was back by then. Andy took his hand and walked out to the dance floor. The crowd separated around them again, leaving Andy and Ducky alone at the center of the floor. She took Ducky in her arms. The orchestra began to play again. Ducky grinned, and then his face froze in terror. "Andy," he whispered, "I can't dance." "Neither can I," she said through her unwavering smile. "Are we crazy?" "Completely." She took a deep breath and began to move to the music. Ducky followed clumsily. A few steps, and then they began to loosen up. A few steps, and they were dancing without shame or concern for what anybody thought. Blaine thought Andy had made this night a real graduation night for him. He watched her, his eyes brimming with pleasure at her graceful beauty. He knew he'd probably never see her again, but his heart was warmed by how right he had been to choose her and how much she had taught him about courage and self-respect. Kate saw their friends leaving and nudged Blaine. "They've ruined everything," she pouted. "The entire prom. Steph and Benny just left. What are you grinning at, Blaine? Honest to God, I don't understand you." Blaine wasn't grinning. He was smiling. And so were Andy Walsh and Ducky Dale. They held each other as the couples around them began to dance again. They held each other and smiled. They danced around and around, smiling at each other and then laughing, dancing around and around and around until they were one. One whirling, smiling, laughing blur of pink. And that is how it was supposed to end. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned a little something about how geeky I am, I guess, if nothing else. 80s dance style. Pretty pink.